Hello there, everybody. Welcome to the Cosmic Horde podcast interview. Today I'm here with Nancy Orlen Weber, someone I know lovingly as Nana. She is my grandmother, and she also happens to be, in this life, a psychic medium and psychic detective with a very fascinating wealth of stories and knowledge and riches that has just been a part of her life experience. And today we get to ask her some questions, learn a little bit more about her visions for the world, her experiences in the past, and just everything in general. So thank you for being here with us today.
Hi, Cole.
Hello there.
Hello.
So, first off, I gave a little introduction there, but I think it'd be fair to have you share a little bit about your spiritual journey. At this point, kind of the key nodal points that you would describe as big experiences, big path pushers, things that made you really solid and firm in your understanding of what you're here to do on this earth and have guided you to where you are today and what you're doing now.
That's all? Okay.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay. The first thing I think of when you say that is, fortunately, I have written a lot since a child. I had a diary then. It advanced into a journal early on, but I wrote on dining mats, in diners, I wrote on napkins, anything I could, I still do. Sticky notes, doesn't matter. I write. And it is the writing that helped me see what proof is, what evidence is about this metaphysical universe, which simply means it's physical and greater than what we see physically, so, or know physically. And so that was the thing that pushed me into, okay, so what is all this that I am able to do and why? And what could it mean? One of the things that came up that really solidified my desperate need to understand, really understand it. My last nursing job was working in a psych unit. And we had an experimental unit, very little drugs, almost none, for very acute and messy psychotics, big time. Homicidal, suicidal, police pickups, trying to kill us when they walked in. It was a small unit. And the living room was where the door opened in from the emergency room, pickups, police pickups, etc. And they would come in. And I was the head nurse. So I'm sitting there at the desk and I start walking down and checking the 10 bedrooms. That's all we had. 10 days stay, 12 bedrooms, all single, very experimental. And I walk down and I go to the last one that's empty and the only one empty, and I smell smoke. It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Tuesday. And so I come back out, and this is South Bronx in the 70s with the highest crime rate in the country, Fort Apache. And so I walk out and I go to some of my staff, would you go back there and see this? I smell smoke. Maybe it's an electrical thing happening. They came back out and they go, what did you smoke? I said, nothing. And so I go home after work. I work days, 7 to 3. And that night, I had a very hard time falling asleep. So I got up early and I got to work early, much earlier than normal. I walk in and I ask for the charts, and I see a guy on a bike, a little stationary bike, by the window of the living room right opposite my desk. And I am feeling anxiety through the roof. Hmm. There are 3 new admissions, 2 women and a man. And I'm looking at them, and then 10 o'clock in the morning, he's walking arm in arm with one of the other people who came in, a woman. He didn't know her. And I said, you can't walk down there towards the empty bedroom. Hell no. Come back in. I didn't say hell, maybe. Maybe I did. And so they came back. 1 o'clock, to the right of us was conference rooms in the same unit. And I'm sitting there with psychiatrists in training for their education. And it's 1 o'clock Wednesday. And a social worker on the unit yells out, fire, and some other words.
Mm.
And we jumped up. I had everybody in my mind how to deal with, and because there was a catatonic who wouldn't get up. And so I helped carry him out as the last piece. We got everybody out immediately. And the director of psychiatry in New York State was with me outside, and we're going to another part of the hospital for safety for everybody, the patients, etc. And I'm laughing. And he goes, what's so funny? I said, I finally get why I can know these things, save lives, because nobody else remembered the catatonic.
Mm.
He would have stayed behind. I counted everybody. I knew everything because I was so anxious.
Mm.
That was the impetus eventually within months, because he burned down part of the unit, and we closed for a month. That was the big impetus for me leaving nursing, among other things. I had been disabled because of something. So this just topped it off, really. But I was then offered the top post in psychiatry research in the state of New York by the chief, the director. And so I laughed and said, no, I'm going to go out and find out what this is all about, because it's more interesting
Mhm.
to know that if you saved a life because you had a precognition, I didn't know the words then. And thank goodness I wrote, because I wrote down every detail. And then I went home and practiced making up stuff because I didn't know anybody did this.
Mhm.
So that's what changed it.
Wow, it's an incredible story. I'm curious a little bit about the anxiety you experienced.
Mm.
Uh, Typically, when I've talked with people who've had psychic experiences, their capacity is more along the lines of sensing the emotions of others. But since this was an event that hasn't exactly arisen yet, what would you say you were really sensing in that scenario?
I call it the patterns of the universe.
Mm.
I think many, Nostradamus, Orson Welles, a whole bunch have said there's no absolute. And science, there's no absolute, right? And so there are certain things that are predictable, but not consciously,
Mhm.
right? And so it doesn't mean that I can predict it because I had some knowledge prior. The universe had the knowledge. I wouldn't dream of thinking I knew that there would be three new admissions and one would set fire to a closet in that room where I smelled smoke, which is what happened. Uh, that's what makes me know I'll never solve all the mysteries, but they're fascinating and I want to know more.
Mhm. So in that case, it's more of a capacity to interact with and sort of get a sense of the patterns of the universe. Uh,
Mhm.
and that brings me to something. When it comes to these psychic abilities, this is something that I've read in a lot of your work and that we've talked about. Every single person has a capacity for them in some regards, some different senses, some different, it's not all the same, obviously, because everyone's unique, but uh, it seems to imply to me, at least, that there's a capacity for experiencing and interacting with this pattern, with these patterns of the universe, regardless of the experiences you've lived through and just who you are, who you claim to be, the identity that you have as a person. So I guess what I'm getting at here, what I'm curious about is, do you feel like it was your already aware nature, I guess, of wanting to save others that had you interact with that pattern? Or was that just because in that
Mhm.
moment, that was the most powerful pattern that you could have interacted with and you were meant to?
It was definitely wanting to save others. I recall two incidents in my life when I was young that taught me who I was in that way, not in other ways, but in that way, that forged it for me. And I still didn't know why. Uh, I was 6. We had just moved in Brooklyn, little porch sitting on it. Two little boys came up to introduce themselves. I was extremely shy and hated to talk. And so a little boy walking past had glasses on, and they yelled out, "Hey, Four Eyes." And my head just spun like in Karen, I think, just whipped around, and I looked at them, and my voice was not the voice I had ever heard out of me before. And I said, "How dare you talk like that? Apologize." And they said, "I'm sorry." I said, "Not to me, to them. How can you apologize to that boy and get off my porch now? Everybody has problems. Just because you can't see mine or your own doesn't mean we don't have two. So stop it now." I looked at myself and I thought, uh, who was that? And where did that come from? And because I was so painfully shy, I had never heard me talk before very much. Dancers. I was a dancer since 2, ballet. Dancers don't talk a lot. They act it out a lot with their body. They dance, right? So that was shocking. And at 10, when I was molested by my teacher, I turned to my best friend in class and I said, "Can you, because it's hard for me to talk, but can you tell every student here to tell every student in the entire school from kindergarten up what he did so that they know to always stay away from him?" And I thought, I like that in me.
Mm.
So those were the seeds,
Mm.
right? An antenna due to my own um, attacks on me, not just there, but I think we have a choice when we encounter mountains of trouble, right? What do we do? And I discovered what I do is care about the next person,
Mm.
the next animal, the next whatever. Don't ever do that again, Nancy. You learn from your mistakes, right?
Mhm.
So for me, it was open up your mouth and talk. And I haven't shut it since.
We definitely don't want you to do that. So even if you could try.
Well, I make a comment like ask my husband, but you know him, so
Oh yeah. Oh no. Well.
he's
So. Oh yeah.
yeah.
Lovely guy. Hmm. So let's go on to another point that I wanted to talk about, revolving around the line of counseling. So we didn't talk about this
Hmm.
much at all in this podcast so far, but you're a spiritual counselor, as I know. You've mentored many, done training for many, coached many throughout you know, your career, I'd say.
Hmm.
And a lot of that has to do with helping people overcome sort of imbalances in their own mind. I'm not sure if you'd agree with that, the way that I put it, but that's what I'd say. So at this point, it appears that there's a sort of, I'd say, almost a crisis in the world with people having imbalanced minds.
Hmm.
And I wanted to get your take on what the primary drivers are for this and why it's happening now, seemingly far more than it has happened in the past.
I don't think it's seemingly
Mm.
not past.
Mm. You'd say it's absolutely
Oh,
more or the same or
oh, this what we know. Okay, so how I've always seen it, and it goes way back to my first husband did split brain studies,
mm,
the Associated Nobel Prize winner, and he had his own serious issues. What I thought of when I added it all together in my 30s, when I went into trance in order to discover things, I would just put myself in deep trance. I wanted to know more, and I figured I have blocks, so I've got to undo them. And I had done some early on psilocybin and a few other natural ones.
Mhm.
And they helped me learn that there's a lot more here that I can discover. And so I didn't want to use anything any longer. I wanted to find out for myself and have control.
Mhm.
And what I felt was, and what I feel now, is it's the split between the intuitive, creative, compassionate, emotional, feeling side, and the left hemisphere, the right hemisphere. And the left hemisphere and it's messy. It's not so clean that way, but the left hemisphere is supposed to take everything, including trauma, and walk it across the mid-fissure called the corpus callosum, right? And then the left hemisphere is going to apply all that with all the electronic gadgets of our central nervous system and come up with a functional response to anything, whether it's trauma or trauma by definition doesn't go to the left hemisphere.
Mhm. Mhm.
And now we also know things like that we've known since the first studies on parasitology. And there's a book called Your Brain on Parasites. If anybody wants to read even the opening chapter, you will go, oh my God, I didn't know that. How parasites can manipulate your thoughts, your attitude, your personality completely and utterly. Yep. And so it is why I thought, oh, they said this thousands of years ago. I think it was the ancient Greeks who said body, mind, spirit. They didn't separate anything.
Mhm.
In fact, the term shikaiko is a Greek term meaning mythical stuff, but it's also a psyche from the goddess, I think, or pardon me, but I don't remember. And it's meaning soul. And the English version of that word and that root word is psychic.
Mhm.
Ah, so psychic is utilizing part of the brain, not the whole necessarily,
Mhm.
a piece of it, but then you have to add in the other parts. Hmm, what did you eat? What nutrients can get supplied to your cells? Because they're the only thing that'll rebuild it,
Mhm.
right? What fungus is in your body? What bacteria? Harmful? Not harmful? Uh, what are you exposed to every day? Toxins everywhere? None? You know, I put it all together and go, okay, so balance has a lot to do with lifestyle and the environment and the genetics and the thoughts and the feelings because thoughts are your machine. It's the software program of the nervous system. The brain is your computer and you're developing software program. Do you like it? You don't like it? Change it. You're the boss. It's an instrument. It's not you. So
Mhm.
I put that together and go, okay, we've had this again and again and again throughout the Attila the Hun, Idi Amin, Hitler. What makes them do what they do? So I can't separate the fact that I don't know what genetics plays. I don't know their thoughts or their feelings. I do know illnesses can, as I've been a medical intuitive ever since I was a young nurse, working in the field. I could see things and doctors would approve because they'd test it out and I'd be right. So I'm saying, not always, no one's always right about all of it, but that imbalance, I believe, has a lot to do with the physical form and the pollution of it,
Mhm.
and the willingness to keep thoughts that do not work well for life itself. If we do not support mm, gratitude for life, and I look at it and go, wow, just because we have online now, you can see it, all the judgment out there. And normally I don't respond. I responded today because I was like, you don't even know me, and you've judged why I say what I say about compassion and kindness as opposed to whatever. Really? And I normally either hit the delete button, block, or just move on. I couldn't. I gave an answer because I thought, you have no clue. Stop judging people. You don't know what I know about facts and evidence. Because she was talking roughly about something she believes she was told.
Mhm.
I said, uh, I've taken an oath, I've had police training, I, I've gone to court, I've written filings and briefs, I've put away murderers, helped put away as a team member, saboteurs as a team member. I've worked with every agencies. Oh, and I'm going, I know what proof means and evidence means. I don't condemn any group. How can you? They're individuals. No agency, no government, no personal, no nonprofit. Yeah, people are people. So the imbalance, though, call, it's been around a long time. And when I first started seeing it, I went, the infection is coming to the surface of the planet.
Mm.
You know, years ago, I wrote a poem about Mother Earth and said, she throws up with lava. She is furious and quakes, right? And that, etc. Because she's being poisoned for a very long time. This is not new, but it's affecting everybody's brain and
Mm.
body. Well, brain and body are one.
Wow. So you see it as more of a
Mm.
uh, an infection almost that's
Oh,
lying
yeah.
dormant, but taken over prolific figures throughout history, but now potentially due to the interconnection of everyone through social media and just through the fact that everyone is dealing with these polluted toxic items on a day-to-day basis, it
So
can be spreading rapidly.
I'll ask you a question.
Sure thing.
So I have worked with a lot of people from Lakotas and other and Hopi and Cherokee
Mm.
over 60 years, I think, or more. They've been here, at least some of the tribes, a good 26,000 years at least that we know of, right?
Mhm.
Not all of them kind, but Hopis, phenomenal. They even took in the Apaches, providing that they stopped warring.
Mm.
They're the big umbrella of compassion and kindness.
Beautiful.
Buddha, Jesus, they would all love them. Mother Teresa, they'd all love the Hopis,
Mhm.
right? Because they lived, they walked their walk, they talked their talk, they kept the earth clean and healthy, right? And they did good. They still do, except what happened to everybody? Where do you think the infection even started? When people came over running away because of they needed religious freedom, look what's going on. And look what went on then. Some of them were respectful, but some of them stole the land, fought and killed everybody, hated the others because they were not them. So tell me what's different.
Not much, except the fact that everyone's witnessing it and partaking with their opinions,
Exactly.
into the mix.
Exactly. And there's more of us on the planet, more to ruin everything.
Mm.
I'm not saying stop having kids, but I am saying everybody's got to grow up and respect regardless of anything. It's kind of funny. You go to another country, not Europe, but you go someplace else in the world, and you're the minority, and you need to learn what that feels like. Wow. And the judgment that, for me, I don't care, anyone who talks about all the illegal immigrants, and I'm going, you don't even know them. Have you met them? Not all of them are killers. I know a lot of people that I help solve crime cases about who are away for life. None of them were illegal immigrants. I've been to death row. Very few of those were illegal immigrants proven to be killers. The majority are white men. Sorry, folks. Well, actually, the majority are black and white men. And I'm not telling you that's good or bad. I'm simply saying, where's the prejudice come from? The roots of it are very strange. This land was wonderful until some groups came here and decided to take it over. But then Africa, the chiefs, sold their people for slavery to
Mm.
here. It's not one group. It's just the mentality of some that I doubt if it was all polluted back then that badly,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
But maybe there wasn't enough clean water for them. Maybe there wasn't enough food. Who knows?
Mhm.
But I'm saying this is very much part of a problem since cave days.
And would you say, I'm trying to get at the metaphysical kind of implications
Sure.
of what you're saying here. So, because obviously we know it has to have some sort of energetic root. And it sounded like what you were applying there with, the cave people, not enough food, not enough water, was that it's derived from some sort of feeling of lack. I'm not sure if that's the absolute case, but I'd love for you to expand on what you're talking
Oh,
about.
yeah. Well, that definitely. It's the fear.
Mm.
There, I believe, I have read it somewhere many, many years ago. There are two things, and only two things exist, fear and love. And we know now physiologically that fear can drive everything to suicide, to homicide. It depends on how fearful, right? The adrenal gland suffers, fatigue, all kinds of problems are issued from fear, where love can heal.
Mhm.
And so it depends on what drives somebody. And that the odd part for me is it's despite what I see as large groups believing together, when you put them in a room with a bunch of questions, I believe they all have different responses, right? They
Mhm.
come from a different reason for doing what they do, but it's still fear. A neuroscientist had done some brain scans. I won't go into the politics of it, but you can see obviously in them the amygdala, which is the fight and flight, startup, was very enlarged in a group of people and not enlarged in the other one at all. But they're both known to have fear. It's just the one that's enlarged has a lot more fear and are a lot more troubled. Now, what happens and why? And what makes that happen? I don't know that we'll ever solve all the inner mysteries because we're not going to solve the mystery of the how many universes and how did the first energetic thing happen in creation?
Mhm.
What put all that there? I mean, the word God is fascinating. Nora, Noorah, foundation is a brilliant foundation that examines a lot of the Aramaic language. He's an expert in it who founded the foundation.
Mhm.
And he's in my book, Soul Detective. I love this. I met him in 1976. He speaks the Lord's Prayer. There's no word evil in Aramaic, for instance. So see how things change, right? Soul means psychic. No word evil. It's mistakes or errors, the correct translation. But evil is live spelled backwards, right? So somebody thought, well, that's an easy way to spell it here. You're evil if you made a mistake. Mm. So I don't have answers. I have more questions than I have answers for sure.
Nothing wrong with that. So yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, would you say, just to close this off, would there's any sort of central fear that you feel like if all of us were able to overcome it overnight, if there was the fear of one thing that
Hmm.
could be overcome, suddenly the world would be existing in a more peaceful state? What would that be?
Despite what some people proclaim to believe, I believe that death is the greatest fear for a lot of people because they can say the words, you have to practice. And of some cultures where they openly speak or they have a gentle way of handling it, like hospice now, is very, very different from what most people walk around afraid to even look at. So it's that and maybe one other thing.
Mhm.
Right. So Women give birth, and without women giving birth, no man would be here. So why would any man anywhere ever be prejudiced against females? Right?
Mhm.
I'm just dropping that in.
Yeah.
I never, because that's been history.
Mhm.
Women have been abused and used. Not all, and not all men, for sure. But the ones who do, it stands out because it's such a strong, incredibly inappropriate attitude
Mhm.
towards their own life. It's not the woman,
Yeah, of course.
it's towards their own life, their
Mhm.
free at life. No gratitude. I don't care how you were raised, orphan or whatever. No gratitude. We people come from all sorts and have gratitude. So I think part of it has always been on this earth a lack of that. You said lack about the African chieftains, right? And I agree. I mean, there is a lack of things, but it's like the captain of a ship is the last one to leave the sinking ship. Why is that chieftain there still when they ship over everybody else so that they can eat and feast? That doesn't make any sense, but it's the same everywhere. Too often, the tribes that are not like that in the unit in our planet don't have a person who runs everything at all. They have groups. Hopi. There's no one head.
Mhm.
It's matriarchal, meaning men and women, not just women. But patriarchal means no women, just men. That's the right and left hemisphere of the brain. I want to rule because my left hemisphere tells me I can do things. But you need the right hemisphere to survive. Who knows?
Well, I think those two tie together, honestly. I'd say what you were bringing up there about the fear of death as well as the attempt to control and dominate kind of going hand in hand. I mean, because if you fear death, then you try to take all the control, all the power that you possibly can to make sure that you can stave off death in whatever way. So partially it could be a bit of a survival mechanism, but still its root uh, is tied to that, obviously, that fear of death, because
Hmm.
at least in my personal
I
opinion.
don't know, but I find that the more I'm comfortable with anything, whether it's my age, which I've always been comfortable saying at any age, never care, or, and I wondered why people make such a big deal over, oh, I wouldn't tell my age, I'm a female. Where's that even come from? Right? I don't get it at all. And death. So I know that I easily say, listen, I don't know how long I have left. And people don't know what to respond, but those who do are not afraid.
Makes perfect sense.
And
All right. Well, we have one more question that I'd love to ask you real quick. So, part of your books that's been most powerful for me, which I didn't mention, by the way. I'd love to have you have a chance at the end to talk about your books, but I've read all of them at this point. Soul Detective, yep, that piece.
um,
Still working on it, truthfully, over here. Just came out 1 week ago, so we'll definitely. I'm excited to get more into that. But besides that, All Nature Speaks, Life of a Psychic Detective, they've all pointed to the truth that every single person has access to these sort of. I mean, most people have psychic experiences without even realizing it, and have access to enhancing that potential just by. Well, actually, that's what I want to ask you. What would you say would be one of the primary methods that you've seen work in your own life to develop your own psychic abilities and work in the life of others?
don't just keep it in your head. Write it down, date it, and
Hmm.
then get feedback where you can. Very simple. The more feedback and the more honesty about that feedback, whether it's good or not, the better off you are.
Nice.
Got it?
Yeah, simple. Can
That's
do.
it.
Yep, and easily applicable, which is awesome. And so that brings me to this. This is one thing that I definitely wanted to talk about. The spiritual state of the world, not as it pertains to history like we have been discussing, but as it pertains to what's coming. It's evident that we're in a very interesting time in history. From everyone I've talked to, they can't pin a time that's been more interesting with many more multifaceted cultural strange happenings all over the world that everyone is kind of experiencing collectively. Uh, and I just wanted to ask if you have any sort of vision of what the collective future looks like.
I think the same thing I've always felt when I learned do your thing, do it well, be authentic, focus on what you can do, have gratitude, give hope to the world, period. We can't know everything. People are looking to see behind the scenes. You cannot unless you're behind the scenes, So probabilities are probabilities and patterns are probabilities. They are not definite. So nobody can predict accurately, absolutely for sure, what the outcome is. But karma is karma, cause and effect. And so when we do our bit to make a difference in a positive way in the world, then at least what we feel in self-care and wellness and mental health is better than not. So for me, I say to people who haven't been part of knowing the inside of the issues throughout the world, like, do you know how much oil has been drilled in what countries? I mean, pick anything.
Mhm.
You don't know. And we may know by looking it up on Google and then pray that that's accurate. We're not party to it unless you work in it directly. You're shipping it. You're the broker for it. You're the, right?
Yes.
So I am saying, folks, I hear a lot of people sum up what they think they know. And having worked with some federal agencies, nobody knows. And there's not a conspiracy. Sorry, because one department doesn't know the other department. They're not allowed. It's broken up. There's a firewall throughout many departments of many agencies. And that firewall prevents them from putting the pieces together well or not, except for the very, very few who can put the pieces together. And then you see it on the news as being caught. But most of the time, you won't see a lot of that. Thank God, because it will have been caught beforehand.
Mhm.
So I know that some of it is not good, what's going on, but I also know that unless you can actually do something about it for real, not just be mad or happy, then focus on your own life. You've got one life here. Even if you had many past lives or future lives, this one you got right now, work on it
Mhm.
and leave the rest to, unless you want to go like I did. I have 7 oaths I've taken, 7 oaths. I don't suggest anybody do that because I'm a walking secret. It's hard, but not. Anyhow, that's my comment.
Understood. Keep
Mm.
focused on your own spiritual progression when getting lost in the complexities of the world is only going to dampen that. And that's the one thing that we have control over.
Yeah, it saps your energy.
Mhm. Absolutely. It does.
Unless you can actually take action properly, lovingly, and usefully. I think
Mhm.
the key is useful action, not just getting online and being mad. That doesn't help anybody, no matter what. Oh, but I have to get rid of it. Go punch a bag. Go take a walk. Go run.
Mhm.
Burn it off. It does not help.
Yeah, completely agreed. Oh, on that note, I'd love for you to share a little bit about your new book, Soul Detective. I'm still in the
Oh,
process of it, as I said, and love to hear.
you're so cute. Thank you. So I wanted everybody to be able to connect deeply with their own soul's wisdom because by doing that, the focus is on having a better life, no matter where we start. We can always improve. And so the book was to gather a lot of the things that happened, like we talked about the pivotal moments in my life and what I gleaned from it and what I ended up doing for myself was develop techniques or for my clients and my classes to develop plenty of ways you can self-help on anything that happens in your life. And so that's the book. And so far, it's having a fun time out in the world.
I'm sure we'll continue to do so.
Thank you.
No doubts. And with that, thank you everyone for tuning in. So much love to all of you. May your lives be filled with peace and blessings. Thank you, Nancy, for joining us.
Thank you, grandson.
You're
Keep going.
welcome. Peace out, everyone.